Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Barrio Times. Today, we're joined by Pedro Trujillo, Organizing Director at CHIRLA, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. And this is our first episode for In the Barrio Series. It's a new series where we're traveling across the United States, going to communities, seeing how federal policies impact local communities. And today, we're at Boyle Heights in Espacio 1839. Pedro, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of the Barrio Times. Love the name. And yeah, so I'm originally from Chiapas, Mexico. I came to the U.S. when I was 6 years old and settled in Northeast Los Angeles, moved to Boyle Heights, lived at Boyle Heights for 12 years, and now I'm living in East Los Angeles. And I started doing immigrant rights work fresh out of high school, got involved right away, and it's been an 18-year struggle, and that word struggle couldn't be more real than it is today, right? For many of us who are doing this work, supporting the immigrant community, and really being witness to all the horrific things that our community is going through, right? But we do this with love and thinking of our community, how we could be with our community, and spaces like Espacio, where we are today. I'm happy to have a friendship with Nico and Mayra, who run Espacio 1839, which means such a big deal for the community as well. It's more than a shop. It's a place for community. It's a place for art. It's a place for resistance, like a hub. And we happen to be in the Radio Espacio studio, right, which they let us borrow today. So shout out to Nico and Mayra for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for telling us about Espacio. I was just about to ask you about it.
Mhm.
But we'll jump right into our interview. Today, we're going to talk about the immigration rates and the impact the community has seen. And we're going to start off asking you, what is an immigration rate? There's so many people that don't know what it is. We want to let them know, what is an immigration rate?
That's right. So any immigration enforcement or federal agency who goes after immigrants, right, in the community, in the streets, at the workplace, at their home, um, schools, churches, under this administration, there's no like safe space, right? Like that's what we've seen all over the country, that people have even been dragged out of, like this worker that was dragged out of daycare, right? That she was a worker there and got taken outside from the facilities itself. And so anytime you see, and it used to be where it was only ICE or Border Patrol, but now other entities have been asked to partake in this efforts, including FBI, DEA, ATF. It's like an alphabet soup of different entities that have engaged in immigration enforcement.
Yeah. And is there a right process for immigration rates to happen?
Well, I mean, in itself, right? It's a very violent, even the word, right? Raid. It's a very violent act where you're forcibly taking someone from wherever they may be, right? I don't think there's a right way per se. There's a cruel way, which is what we're seeing
Yeah.
a lot of more often now, and then there's administrative ways of also asking people and detaining people. Right? There's other administrative ways which we've seen in the past. Um, Nonetheless, it's for the most part a difficult thing for the family, right? The family unit gets torn apart, whether it's administrative, nice, right, or the violent, aggressive way that we've seen more often, more recently.
Yeah. Can you tell us what is the administrative process? You talked a little bit, the administrative process, but what does that mean exactly?
Right. So I'm referring to when immigrants have had to present themselves at immigration courts, or they have some type of notice to
Mhm.
appear, or some type of deportation order that they have to go present themselves in court and follow the a due process, right? Follow a due process where it's like you go to a hearing, you plead your case, either yourself or your attorney, if you are able to afford an attorney, as immigrants are not granted an attorney the way for civil violations, right? Um, and and so that's where we're seeing an abuse of the power currently, where they're skipping due process. The federal agents want to deport people sometimes with expedited removal the same day if you're a Mexican national, We've heard of some people who have been removed the same day. It's being challenged in the courts, in the federal courts, and so maybe in the near future we'll have a different update.
Mm-hmm.
But it's scary times, right, for immigrants. Many are feeling it, especially right now that we're getting close to the holidays. This is December, the time frame that we're recording,
Mm-hmm.
and really people have to make some conscious and serious decisions in their family unit to be able to either eat for the day, for the
Mm-hmm.
week, because you have to go out to work, right, to make a living, or be safe from the hands of immigration.
Yeah, thank you
Mhm.
for that. And can you walk us through what happened in Los Angeles? We know in the summer we saw a lot of immigration enforcement, but can you walk us through what the community witnessed?
Yeah, so it was Los Angeles was deemed ground zero, if you will, for what this administration was, the new policies that they were gonna carry out and how they were gonna be carrying out their immigration enforcement and mass deportation agenda. And so we started seeing racial profiling immediately. We started seeing that they were going to certain neighborhoods and picking people off of the streets. Oftentimes, people who were street vendors, day laborers, and car washers were the hardest hit. Then probably the next workforce would probably be gardeners. And but then we also started seeing where they were just stopping they were driving by and seeing who they would pick off of the street, right, where they were doing what's called roving patrols, which driving around, terrorizing the community, because we even saw them driving around with their side door of their vans open, long rifle in their arms, as they were just driving around the streets, right, like if it were a war zone, right, and created a crisis to then have the National Guard come in, right? When the local electeds, the local police said, we have everything under control. And of course, this is what the administration are good at doing, is creating and fabricating crisis, right? To,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to sell that to their base. And in the hopes of repressing and instilling fear. And unfortunately, we saw a similar practice in other states all over the country, right? But that's why I mean that Los Angeles was ground zero, because what we were able to learn from it and what we were able to see, we shared with our partners and sister organizations that do similar work and do immigrant rights work all over the country.
Yeah, and I'm going to stop you there because I think you said something really interesting that I don't think a lot of people understand is that anybody who looked undocumented was essentially stopped and questioned, right? So that means that U.S. citizens were also targeted, not just undocumented immigrants, but folks who
Mm-hmm.
are U.S. citizens. And I think I saw a report that said that over 170 citizens were detained
Yeah.
by ICE as well.
Yeah. So unfortunately, and we live in a society where racism is still prevalent, right? And I was being asked about the deportations. It's like, you think racism is what's fueling the deportation and the mass deportation? And I'm like, racism is a part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and white supremacy is a part of it, but at the core of it, it's capitalism, right? It's that there's money to be made. Currently, there are over 60,000 people in detention, the highest number we've seen, right? And of those folks detained, right, because most of those detention centers are private detention centers, it doesn't matter if you're a US citizen or undocumented. What matters is that you got booked, because
Mm-hmm.
getting booked means then, or getting processed means that a bill is going to be sent to the federal government so that our tax dollars pay for that person being seen at a detention center, right, or processed. And so there are U.S. citizens, to the surprise of some, there are U.S. citizens who only speak Spanish, or Spanish is their main language that they use. And so we saw and we documented where Spanish speakers were being targeted for speaking Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
sometimes these were U.S. citizens, or that because they went in to raid a car shop, nothing but brown men working at the they must be undocumented, detaining folks, and really violating their Fourth Amendment rights, and oftentimes their Fifth Amendment rights as well. This is something that we've unfortunately has happened all over the. We've seen that's happened all over the country, right? And Los Angeles was not the only place that has seen this.
Yeah, you dropped so much there, and I think one of the big parts that you mentioned is when ICE shows up to a workplace, everybody in the workplace gets targeted, right? It's not just one single person. This administration has led immigration raids by this idea of like criminals, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just criminals; it's anybody who's within the vicinity
Mm-hmm.
that gets targeted.
Yeah, we're seeing some figures recently for organizations that have been tracking who's being detained currently, and I think it's over 70% of the people detained have no criminal record, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so prior to the Trump administration, the majority of detentions and people in detentions, or the majority of deportations, were at the border, people trying to enter the border. So they would turn themselves in and ask for some type of process. Many were turned away, and because of all the different things we've seen at the border, the policies we've seen at the border. And but now it seems like the attention of Border Patrol and ICE is into the interior, to
Mm-hmm.
residents who have been living for decades in the United States.
Yeah, and what are some of the misconceptions that you've heard around the alley raids that you can share with us?
Yeah, so one of the big ones, and I have friends who live all over the country that were messaging me as well, asking about what was happening during, because what they were seeing in the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the media picked up this whole idea that LA was on fire, right? And during the June response to immigration enforcement doing indiscriminate detentions and picking up of people and abductions of people, right? And I told folks that, like, really it was stunning to me that even folks who are, fairly pro-immigrant and have lived in Los Angeles were confused as to what was happening. And had to tell them, like, no, we're fine. Like, we've had worse things happen when our teams win in Los Angeles. When
Mm-hmm.
Lakers have won the some tournament, when the Dodgers have won a tournament, we've seen more destruction of property in those time frames than what we saw in June here in Los Angeles, right? So that's a huge misconception that we saw, that the administration sold to the public to get the National Guard
Mm-hmm.
here. Just this week, they're announcing that after 6 months, the last remaining National Guard folks are supposed to be leaving Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
because what were they doing? Like, there was nothing else to do for
What
them.
were they doing?
Yeah, there was nothing else for them to do, because the protests around the detention center scaled back. They only happen occasionally, and even when they do happen occasionally, there hasn't been the disruptions that we were seeing in June. Because also immigration has changed their tactics of how they're doing enforcement here
Mm-hmm.
in Los Angeles, based off of what they were trying to do in June, which in June they were trying to do a tactic of fear in the community by saying, yeah, we're here and do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people said, bet. And they did something about it. And then what happened, right? Which is, some folks chose the violence, which we do not condone. But that forced them to change their tactics. And even the detention center right now, if you go, it looks completely different to what it did in June.
Yeah, essentially, the community rose up for immigrants here in Los Angeles, and
I
they
mean, it's just
responded.
in LA. LA is an immigrant town, right? It's just that the roots go so far back, so deep. People with generations of immigrants who've lived here in Los Angeles and still have that immigrant identity, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just natural to us.
Yeah, and who is impacted by these raids that the public rarely heard about? We know undocumented immigrants were targeted, but who else is being targeted by this?
Yeah, a lot of business owners and businesses who were impacted because, to surprise of some and not to us, is that immigrants buy things. Immigrants buy stuff. Like, we're out there. We like to shop. And so those things, people change their spending habits. I'm not an economist and I don't have figures for you, but from the folks with small businesses, they've told us that it's been rough. From those that do street vending, they've told us that it's been rough. It's astounding that just a few years ago we had immigrants deemed as first responders, right? Having immigrants being out there still working during a global pandemic, and then now being persecuted, right, for doing the same things they were doing then, right, which is
Mm-hmm.
serving the community, doing some type of service, and now they're being chased after for a quick buck.
Yeah. And when one person is detained, what chain reaction does that set up for families and neighborhoods?
It's always difficult. It's always heartbreaking for a community to learn that somebody in their community that they've loved and create some type of relationship with is no longer there, that they're detained. We've seen people come together to support, and I haven't seen this level of mutual aid in a very long time, which is the other side of the ugly, right? Is the beauty of people coming together to be like, no, we're going to support this person so we can try to pay for their bond, try to pay for their attorney. Not everyone has that level of community, right? So many fall through the cracks and aren't able to be supported. But immediately, right, the community is impacted. Church community, those that are churchgoers, right, church believers and religious, their their whole community is impacted and hurt, right, by it. And so the question then goes to the church leaders, like how are they responding, right, and how are they supporting the community, their own folks, right? How are they
Mhm.
standing up for them? Because some people chose Trump, right? Some religions went with Trump and they said, let's pray our way through it, you know? And so a lot of folks are questioning as well their churches currently, as to how do we change this, because it's hurting people, obviously. The other thing that we've seen, unfortunately, is that there's money to be made from the private detention centers and private attorneys. Some attorneys are charging ridiculous fees to get someone out on bond, not to fight their case, just to get them out. And they're like, all right, I got you your bond hearing. That's what the contract said. You lost your bond because the government is denying bond left and right. You still got to pay me.
Mhm.
Like, what about my appeal? Oh, that's another fee. If we were worried before about public notaries, notarios, preying on the immigrant community, now it's not just them, but it's also some of these attorneys who are charging ridiculous amounts of fees.
Yeah, money surrounds everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
From private detention centers to even the services that immigrants are trying to access to essentially fight
That's right.
all the deportations that are happening and immigration enforcement.
That's right.
Um, so what has changed in the community since the raids began, and not just the days, but we're now months away from June. Tell us, how has the community changed?
Yeah, just the resistance, right? It's a lot more organized. There's networks within networks within networks. It's decentralized. Early on, when I was reorganizing the rapid response network here in Los Angeles, the one that we're a part of with CHIRLA, I told the folks who were participating, like, hey, like we need to be able to have something that if one of us is out for whatever reason, that someone else can pick up, and the system still carries forward, that the process of how to defend people and how to help people, it still continues, right? It doesn't depend on one person or one organization. I'm happy to say that it lives on and it exists in that way. And then the other thing is other new networks popped up too in places that we didn't know that they had networks,
Mhm.
but then we randomly stumble upon a hotline number for rapid response in that area, right? And that's how we in Los Angeles responded in that moment. The mutual aid efforts again to help out. CHIRLA has given over 1,000 bags of food and things for the week, right? So that people can still have food to eat since the raid started, right? And then we go deliver those to those families so they can have something. And but we're not the only ones. Others just on their own, they're like, okay, what do we put together? What do you need so we can get you, if you lost some income in your household, to pay for rent or pay for that week's meals, right? And so it's been nice to, and it gives me hope, right, that even if one of us again is not doing the work, one of us is gone, that it still carries on, that the people still believe wholeheartedly that this is not okay what's happening right now. There's two sides to the psychological impact that's happening on the children as well, right? Because kids, they're so perceptive, right? They really like, even when they're as first grade, they're already understanding and seeing things, right? Seeing the world and also processing a lot of the trauma themselves. But from that pain that a lot of the children are going through right now, it's likely going to change how they are going to lead in the future, how they are going to show up in the future, where many of them believe are going, you best believe, are going to be our leaders, our political leaders, who are going to be like, this was not okay and we should never let this happen again, they're going to carry that forward. They're going to carry that banner forward, and they won't forget this, right? We hear about some of our current state Senate leaders and assembly members and other politicians who, when they were kids, it was in the 90s, and the raids in the 90s that were happening at a lot of workplace sites in Los Angeles, they cite that moment as a moment of like their awakening to be like, I need to do something about this. And their path took them in different directions, and they ended up being in their to hold office. And many of them are our champions today defending immigrants. So I am hopeful that from all of this bad stuff, that also we have new champions coming for the future.
Yeah, and you said so many important stuff there. One of them is when you all are delivering food, it's because immigrants face an impossible choice, right? Go to work or not go to work. And it's because of the fear of being on a bus stop, you're gonna get stopped and detained, or even just showing up to work. You don't know if a raid is gonna happen. So I hope people understand, right, the impossible choice that undocumented immigrants make day after day, regardless of, right, the situation that we're in. And the second part that you said is about leaders. And I think we got to do a barrio fact check here, because undocumented immigrants cannot vote, right? Undocumented immigrants cannot vote, but children of immigrants can vote. And they're going to remember this. They're going to remember the politicians who spoke up against the raids. They're going to remember the politicians who voted to fund these raids. And in the future, these same leaders are going to be the ones that are going to deliver the policies that are going to impact our communities in a positive manner.
It's really the hope, right? And we have to do our part as to show the next generation the way of what courage looks like, because it's, there's a barrio times and there's scary times too, right? It's scary. It's scary times as well for many in our community. But then people are still choosing courage. People are still choosing their family and the future of their families by doing these things, right? It's one of those. It's the unsung hero. It's the little things that you don't hear about on TV and anywhere else, right? You won't see it anywhere on social media. But it's people choosing to still show up for their families, still take the risk of going to work, going to shop, do grocery shopping, because it's our families.
Yeah. I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because you're talking about rapid response networks. For people who don't know what that is, can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, I mean, there's different versions of it, but for us and the one that we're a part of, the Rapid Response Network has been a group of different organizations, nonprofits, unions, faith groups, and even community members, grassroots groups who want to get organized in a way of being effective in communicating, verifying immigration enforcement in their community. Our local law enforcement officials often go undercover, and so right now during times of raids, the sheriffs may be doing an undercover operation, and so we go verify what entity they're with, and to dispel the fear and to help people kind of like go through their day, right? Because we don't want people constantly being bombarded of like, immigration's here, right? Yes, they have many agents throughout the day, but we want to help people navigate what's real and what isn't. Early on, there were so many rumors about immigration agents. Even when there was a fires in Pasadena, FEMA showed up, and FEMA happens to carry the logo of the Department of Homeland Security, the seal. And so people thought that was immigration enforcement, but it was FEMA that was doing some surveys there in Pasadena. So that's one of the basic kind of like purposes of the Rapid Response Network. The other is to help people, connect them with a free or low cost attorney. And then the next thing is to help out the families with what I call mutual aid. And then we're doing now, trying to connect them to mental health providers as well, because that's the other aspect of this work. Not just to the family, but to the family member that was detained when they are released after sometimes months of being in a detention center. Some of them come out not doing mentally well, right? They've been negatively impacted from what they've seen in those detention centers, from the trauma, right? That they've withstood for so long. And so we've already connected a few of them to social workers.
Yeah, and I think it's important to tell people that the detention center conditions are horrible,
Hmm.
right? There's
Hmm.
many reports of private detention centers that
Hmm.
are not compliant with conditions.
Hmm.
Can you share a little bit about them?
Yeah, I mean, it's just from what we've heard from people who have been in detention and got out recently, how it's extremely cold, that the air conditioner there is on full blast, and so people and they're only given an aluminum sheets to cover themselves, and so whatever clothes that they were wearing the day, that's how they get thrown into the detention center, and oftentimes they find themselves needing to lay down back to back with someone else, another stranger who's detained, in order to get some body heat and be able to get a little bit of rest. That they get packed into rooms in a detention center, that they're held in a facility that it's only meant to be temporary for days instead of what's supposed to be 48 hours max, and they're supposed to
Mhm.
be moved to a more permanent center. We've got reports from folks from doing intakes with them, legal intakes with them, that they've been there for over a week in a temporary cell, right? That the food is oftentimes frozen, that it's minimal sandwiches, turkey sandwiches with the frozen meat, right? And a small juice, crackers, very unhealthy situations. And the worst of all is people who have some type of health condition, that there's been a lot of cases where people are not given the health care that they need. Think of those that are elderly, think of those that take medication on the regular, diabetic folks. They're really in high risk, and many have had to be hospitalized. Some have died in detention because of a problem that started and could have been prevented had there
Mhm.
been some more attention, medical attention, that was early.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And you touched a little bit about the emotional trauma of not just folks who are in detention center, but how do people describe the emotional and mental toll of living in constant fear of enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of studies of this in the future of really the harmful effects of long-term trauma, right? Because has been sustained for many cities across the country, where they're constantly seeing or hearing about either a friend or nearby that you just escaped or you just missed it, right? That they just missed you from being detained. Immigrants are resilient. That's one thing, but some have turned to, you know, religion. Others are planning. They already have their plans in place in case they do get arrested, and so many have actually prepared family plans in case one family member gets detained. People know what to do in the household, so that it doesn't catch them off guard, right?
Mhm.
Because immigrants own vehicles, some are homeowners, immigrants may have a certain amount of money in banks, right? That's in the thousands of dollars. So that has to be already, there has to be some type of plan in place so that they don't struggle from if they get deported or they're detention for a long time, and that they're the only ones that can give the go for releasing certain assets. We don't want people to get caught off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also their children, right? Imagine having to have this conversation with the 10-year-old of
Mm.
what to do if your parents don't come home, or
Mm-hmm.
how to be ready in case, yeah, they don't show up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think we don't talk enough
Right.
about children and the impact that it has on children. And they're citizens, right? Their parents are deported,
Mm.
and their parents have to make a decision to either take them with them or leave them in the care of a family member.
Yeah, and then oftentimes, unfortunately, that's when the family separation occurs, because there's families who are mixed status, right? That there's a U.S. citizen parent and one that's out of status or has quasi status or has an application in process. That person gets detained and or deported, and the U.S. citizen stays here with the kids, right? And the kids are now growing essentially with a long distance relationship with that other parent.
That's
Mm-hmm.
really tough. It's really hard. Especially,
Mm-hmm.
I've had many friends who have shared about having to live with one of their parents, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the parents lives out of the state, and I mean out of the country, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really traumatic for them.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think one of the LA is a sanctuary city. So what does that actually mean when federal agents can still carry out raids?
Even though Los Angeles is a sanctuary city. In definition, it's really that they're not gonna and not supposed to help out with federal enforcement unless there's certain criteria of it's basically saying like this person is so bad that we need the support of local law enforcement to get involved. So there's a whole process for that, where there's usually warrants signed by a federal judge, that are valid warrants that get signed for that collaboration to happen. But nevertheless, we need rapid responders to be on the lookout and to confirm that there is no collaboration in the community. No city dollars are supposed to be used to support the deportation machine. That could be like if they're requesting for information, requesting someone to help them identify someone. Like federal agents are asking a local city worker to provide some type of information. If they put any time, staff time into it, then that's violating the sanctuary law. Interfering with federal agents is a crime, and so they cannot get in the way. They cannot impede. We cannot impede because then that's how they would be. I mean, they're jailing people who aren't even doing those things, right? Like they're not even, and they're just accusing them and dropping the cases later on because they have no evidence against the person that they're claiming was obstructing justice, right? When there's video evidence that they weren't obstructing justice. But yeah, it's very limited. Even though we're known as a sanctuary city, it's just it's very little that the city can actually do to stop federal agents from doing what they're doing.
What does Ali's experience tell us about where national immigration policy is failing?
We should have had immigration reform by now. We should have had policies that gave people who have been living for decades in the United States, and are undocumented, giving them a chance already to be able to say, "Hey, I'm here. I want to apply for this benefit. I've been paying my taxes. Whatever. Do the process that's already an intense process with immigration services." So that they could finally have papers and not have to worry right like they are right now.
Yeah. And there's so many misconceptions. I've heard a lot of people say, why don't you just get in line?
Mm-hmm.
But there is no line to get in to fix your legal status because Congress has failed to pass any meaningful immigration reform for the last 30 years.
Yeah. And even then, those that are going through the line, the very few that do have access to that so-called line, they're now being detained at their interviews or for going to their court hearings, or check-ins.
Yeah, it's an attack on not just undocumented immigrants, but even the small legal immigration process that we do have, making it impossible for people to obtain green cards or even those who have legal status. Right? We've seen TPS, and we've seen, like you're talking about, interviews. And I just read a report earlier today that USCIS is planning to do denaturalizations, right? Like taking away green cards from people who already have it. So what are our options here?
Right.
It's terrible. And the next question is, why should people outside of Los Angeles see what's happening here as a national issue, not just a local one?
Right now, it's Los Angeles was the focus, right, for the first few months. And what we were telling folks was your city could be next. And como se dice en español, dicho y hecho, right? We called it that, and we started seeing that similar practices were taking place in other cities. And the other side to it was that people rose up to the occasion in different ways, right? We saw whistles in New York. That's something that got picked up over there, right? We saw more white residents in North Carolina that rose up and was shocking and chasing the border patrol out there. We have to pay attention to these practices because they can come to our city and they could be practiced for impeding or limiting our freedom of speech and punishing First Amendment rights activities. And so we have to be very, very cautious of those things, because once dissent is punishable with jail, right? Once protesting becomes a punishable offense, then we're in trouble. Our democracy is in trouble. And so that's why we have to keep a close eye to it.
Yeah, and it's what's that saying, right? Like, first they came for immigrants and then they came for me. That they're starting with immigrants, but they're gonna go after all of us at some point, and we have to keep an eye on that. And I think the other part that's important, and we talked a little bit about this, right? Like Congress in action for 30 years has led us to this moment where immigrants are essentially being persecuted, right? Like they're being kidnapped off the streets. But also, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill that gives money, that funds DHS to be able to do these operations, right? These are for people who are able to vote. These are your congressional members. These are actions that they are taking in DC that are happening, that are having a direct impact in our communities, right? And it's so important for us to hold them accountable, right? And to pick up the phone and call your members of Congress and say, what are you doing? Right? Like I voted for you and these are not the values that I expected you to hold in DC.
That's right. We have to put a lot of pressure on our congressional reps. They're the ones that are responsible, and they'll tell you that, oh, I have no power. And it's like, no, together you do have power, and just get organized, do your job, get to work. Because many have bent the knee to the Trump administration, and this is where it's gotten us to this point, right? Where massive deportation has been prioritized for the budget, while cutting critical services for the elderly, for the most vulnerable, threatening to cut, the SNAP program. Yeah, where did that money go to? Oh, we don't have money for SNAP, but we have money for massive detention centers. We have money for massive deportation machine. It's the most funded police force in the world is ICE and CBP.
Yeah. We're getting near the end of our interview, but two more questions for you. One is for any allies that are watching us, how can they get involved? One. And then the second one, for anyone who's undocumented that's listening to the video, what resources can you recommend them to look into? Or where can they find resources?
Yeah, for US citizens, I mean, this is your time to shine. This is your time to show your privilege, share your privilege with the world, to get educated, get informed. We don't know everything. We're not perfect, but to come in with a humble and open heart to care for your community members, right? To care for your neighbors. And it's as simple as that, right? It can be as small as doing a fundraiser for your local org that is doing rapid response, that's doing bond relief, that's doing mutual aid efforts. Or you can go as far as getting involved, be part of the rapid response network, be the eyes on the ground to make sure that no abuses are taking place on your watch. For immigrants, undocumented folks, stay strong. You're not alone. Look for support from other community members. Get connected. The worst thing that you can do is isolate yourself in these times of where there's enforcement against us, against the immigrant community. You have to, speaking from experience, what will get you through these times is seeing other people who are like you and who share hope, share the values of family unity, of hard work. Right? When you're together with those people, it just helps you get you through the day, especially with difficult years like this one.
Yeah. And community is everything, and we're here to support each other, and we're gonna get through this one way or another. And just lastly, Pedro, is there anything that you want to say, something that I didn't ask you, any last thing that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, of course. Pray for us and support your local organization. Many organizations that used to do this work have stepped aside to try to get out of the crosshairs of the federal government. But organizations like CHIRLA, Carecen, Immigrant Defenders here in Los Angeles, and so many across the country have said, we can't stand aside. We can't let our community be trampled, knowing what we know about our community, knowing that we are not what this administration is trying to paint us as, right? And let that guide our courage and our decision to continue the struggle. So we need your support. We're under attack as well as an entity, because we're good at what we're doing, and the administration doesn't like that, and so we're also under attack from the federal government. Cyber attack, threats from Congress members and senators. So yeah, we need all your support, and if we don't continue doing the work, I'm sure others will still do it, and so we join you to also join the fight, so that we're not the only ones doing this work. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pedro. And thank you for joining us in our first ever In the Barrio, a new series here at the Barrio Times. Don't forget to subscribe on Substack and follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Follow us. Bye-bye.